So this video is going to be a little off script, but I thought to end the year off with everything that's been going on and you know getting the short film done and all that, that I'd look at my top 10 movies of 2023. Now, before I begin, I must confess that I didn't watch everything this year, or at least most of the stuff I wanted to, particularly in the foreign film area of cinema. But I hope to rectify that next year, hoping that a bunch of really awesome stuff comes out. But just to talk about the year a bit, it was pretty exciting. I can't think of another time in my life where I was really excited for a year in cinema. But this year was definitely that. It was definitely, at least in my living memory, it's really been a phenomenal year. But yeah, so well, without further ado, let's begin. So starting at number 10, I have the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, I've been a Mario fan for a really long time, probably since, gosh, elementary school. So to finally have a movie that came out celebrating Mario that was done right this time, compared to in the past, it was really great. I didn't get to see this one in the theater, unfortunately. I was busy with a lot of other stuff, and I wanted to see other things in the theater. But I will say, the direction of it, well, first off, the animation. I thought the animation was very good, and I was thankful that it was animated. It wasn't live action like the original Mario Brothers movie was about 30 years ago. But yeah, it was. It was for a kids film. It was really good. It was lighthearted. It was action packed. It was very. It was very very fun to watch, and being a fan of Mario. I will say I think it is the lowest on the list because I mean it's compared to pretty much everything that comes after it. I didn't think it was that phenomenal. I think for a family flick of the ones this year, I think this one was definitely the best. Another reason I think is because I'm older, my tastes in particularly animation has changed a lot. So I will say, had it come out about 10 years ago, or around the time that say Wreck-It Ralph came out, if I had been about that age when this came out, I think I would have absolutely loved it. So regardless, I really enjoyed the film, and it was a very 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 fun film. At number 9, there's Napoleon. Now, I'm a big history guy. I really liked history a lot. I still do, actually. So I was really pumped to see a big historical epic on the screens this year. I thought Joaquin Phoenix was going to be really good. I thought it was going to be an excellent film. And I will say, I do think to some degree it was a pretty good film. Definitely not the best of what Ridley Scott has directed, but I was a little underwhelmed, I would say. Like I said, I still like the film, but it was just missing a lot. So the film kind of mainly focused on the relationship between Josephine and Napoleon, which I think not a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot more people were expecting sort of the more commanding life of Napoleon and his campaigns across Europe. Um, and I will confess that it was the shorter cut. I have not seen the extended cut that's supposed to come out. If not soon, then either it already has or it's going to be a little later. But that's besides the point. I'm talking about what I saw so far. But yeah, it was just I thought the battle scenes were really good. The way they were directed, particularly Waterloo, I thought was very good. Unfortunately, most of the battles were only about like 15 minutes. And for a lot of those, specifically like Austerlitz and Waterloo, I mean, you can't really do it in 15 minutes. I mean, good grief, there was a whole movie like 50 years ago about just the Battle of Waterloo, and that's I think 2.5 hours. So it's crazy. But so I will say, not Ridley Scott's best by any means, but I still enjoyed it. There was a lot of things that were inspiring to me. Who something I want to do. Hopefully, if I ever have a career, is to do historical epics. So. Yeah, that was Napoleon. At number 8 is Asteroid City. Now, I will say I'm not particularly a big fan of Wes Anderson's films, mainly because I haven't seen that many of his films. This one was interesting. I will say the cinematography in it was very good, particularly the coloring. I thought was fascinating. The way it looks sort of like a kiddie, like like 1950s type of film. I was a little surprised by the elements that were. Particularly the alien, I guess, was a little surprising. I didn't expect the story to go that way. Some of the elements in black and white are really good, and the switching aspect ratios, which is something I'm going to well, maybe not into later, but there's something Maestro did as well. But I think it was different than what I expected from Wes Anderson. The only other two I've seen are Rushmore and the Royal Tenenbaums, and I would say his earlier works I think I liked a little more than this one. Not to say this one was bad. This one was really good. It's a little different for me. It's a little hard for me to get into Wes Anderson because his style is very specific. It's very very particular, but it's definitely very distinguishable from a lot of other directors. So like you can just look at an image of a Wes Anderson picture and just think, that's Wes Anderson. But yeah, it was really interesting, and I may have to watch it a little more to see where I think of it, in the future. But I will say on a first viewing, it was really really amazing. Again, another one I didn't see in the theater, unfortunately. I think if I had, I think it would have been more interesting. So, yeah. At number 7 is John Wick 4. Now, this one was insane. Um, this is one I did see in the theater, and this was back in March. It came out around the time of my birthday. It was quite a treat, honestly, to see it on the big screen. I'd seen the other John Wick films before. I think that when my dad and my brother, we saw the third one just before we saw the fourth one, which was crazy. But there was honestly too much to process. Again, it's not a very big plot heavy film. It's much more action packed. But I will say the action was pretty good. It was amazing, and I loved a lot of the cinematography in it, especially with some of the parts where Keanu Reeves is in the building and he's going through different rooms and stuff, and it has that overhead shot. It's really cool. It's like a little maze or something. So I thought it was interesting, and it just suspended my viewing experience in the sense that I realized, or at least it reminded me that it's like, oh, I'm watching a movie. So yeah, I'd say it was about what I expected. It was a really fun time. Again, not really plot heavy, but I mean, with John Wick, I don't think it's necessarily plot heavy. You don't really go for the plot. You go for the action, and there was definitely a lot of it. I don't think it's my favorite. It's either my second or third in the John Wick series. My first is probably number 2 in terms of my favorite. But this one was still a great release, and I think it was a good conclusion, at least if it's supposed to be a conclusion to the John Wick series, which I think it kind of works, and I'm satisfied with that. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, this was definitely, I think, a really really good action movie. At number 6 is The Killer. Now, The Killer was fascinating. Like that whole opening 10 minutes was phenomenal. Going into the main character's mind and all that was really phenomenal. So yeah, like with Anderson, I haven't seen a lot of David Fincher's works. I think I've only seen Seven, The Social Network, and what is it? Fight Club. Fight Club. Yes. But I would say I don't know if it necessarily stacks up with those, but it was still very good. It was very interesting. There was quite a bit of action in it, not to the extent of John Wick, but it was very interesting. It's also very methodical, very introspective, very interesting seeing how this guy who's this assassin basically does these certain things. And the plot was very interesting. It definitely in the first 30 to 45 minutes it went in a direction I did not expect it to go, which was interesting. It was a little different. I was surprised a bit by the lighting. I mean, there was some Fincherian sort of lighting that I recognized. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that in Seven and Fight Club and all that. But it's yeah, it's different. I'm noticing a lot of things this year were very different from a lot of other things that I've seen from directors before. But it was a very interesting film to watch and to examine through the eyes of this character. I was gonna give it, I think, a higher score, but there was just some things about it. I think I need a more time watching it in order to sort of see where it places for me. But overall, it was a very very good story driven film, and I really yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about it. Okay, now we're getting to the top 5. So these are the ones that I thought were absolutely incredible, and I will confess these are the ones I've had the most time I would say to think about to some degree, with the exception of this one actually, because it only came out a few weeks ago. But number 5 is The Boy and the Heron by Hayao Miyazaki. Now, I would say for me, this was the year of Miyazaki, especially with Ghibli Fest, which I was able to see all the films in theaters. Not only that, but in my college that I go to, I took a class on Miyazaki's films, and it was a very, very fun class. It was one of the, I think, best classes I've ever taken, to be honest. And it was fun going through all of his films. And so going in, I knew a lot about Miyazaki's style. I would say the things he was interested in, and the sort of the themes he explored. Um, I will say this of his previous films. If you've never seen it, and you maybe want some, and you're wondering, it's like, okay, well, what is it sort of similar to? I would say it's probably mostly similar to Spirited Away, um, in terms of sort of going into this like, you know, fantasy world and that type of thing. It's much different than there are a lot of differences that distinguish it from Spirited Away in terms of the main character sort of trying to cope with the death of his mother, and the sort of, I guess, the ways in which maturity comes to us. And I will say the animation was incredible. I would say of Miyazaki's works, it was his best in terms of animation. It's a little hard for me to rank it higher than my top five Miyazaki films because, particularly Wind Rises, which was his last film, and that was the film he made 10 years ago. I will say, coming off a 10-year hiatus, it was very good. For what it was, but in terms of follow up to Wind Rises, it's a little hard because Wind Rises just feels so much like a final film, and to know now that it's not. I mean, even though it's not its final film, it still feels like it. This one is a little different. The ending also was a little surprise for me. I remember walking out of the theater and watching it with some friends, and I was like, I understand why it ended there, but I feel like it needs a little more. But it's sort of, I think, something I'm gonna have to, you know, wrestle with for a bit the more I watch it. I will say, if you never watched Miyazaki before, I wouldn't suggest watching this one first. If you're gonna watch a Miyazaki film first, it would definitely be My Neighbor Totoro. Um, I don't know when to say if you're going through Miyazaki's films when to watch it. I will say, though, whenever if you ever do decide to watch it, or whenever you watch it, it is definitely worth it. It's a very exciting film, a very interesting film, very thoughtful film, um, and yeah. So I thought it was really really good coming from Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. At number four is Killers of the Flower Moon. So this was my first Scorsese picture in theaters, and it was I would say of the epic kinds of films that came out this year, this one was definitely it was close to being the most epic. Um, it was again another historical epic type of thing, dealing with the native tribes in Oklahoma and their discovery of oil, and then whites coming in and trying to get the money for themselves, and so a lot of dealing with like corruption and distrust of people, which is a lot of things that Scorsese deals with in some of his other films. Again, like some of the other directors I mentioned, this one was very different than a lot of Scorsese's other pictures. But I will say it was there were a lot of things I noted watching it. I was like, oh, I remember something like this happening in a different Scorsese picture and other things. So it was really good. It's a subject matter I didn't think someone like Scorsese would be interested in, but it was. I thought he did a very good job delivering it. It was very long, but I didn't necessarily think that hindered the picture. And in fact, I think it actually worked out very well for me. To me, it seemed like 3.5 hours just sort of flew by, but I was sort of invested the whole time, and it was it contained a lot of information in it, and it was very it was kind of exciting to some degree, sort of seeing this plot go along, and especially the ending was very. I don't want to necessarily spoil it for anyone, but the ending was very very interesting from Scorsese. The cinematography, I definitely think it might get nominated for an Academy Award. I don't know if it'll win, but it was very good. I thought the cinematography was really good. The acting, Lily Gladstone's acting in particular, was very, very good. She did a very good job standing up against, or next to both DiCaprio and De Niro, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do considering their repertoire. But yeah, it was. There were a lot of new faces in this film that were very good. They were very, very good actors, and I just would say props to Scorsese for getting these people involved. These sort of newer actors, or at least newer faces, not necessarily newer actors, but newer faces that most people probably never seen before. But they were very good. Um, so yeah, that's Killers. At number three is The Holdovers. Now, this was a very interesting picture. This seemed, at least seemed to me, I don't know if it necessarily was, but it seemed to me it was a much lower budget film. It was much more character driven. Um, it was a very interesting picture. So it takes place in the 1970s in New England, and it was shot in a way, or at least the filters maybe that they used on the picture itself. It was tried to make it look like a 70s picture. Um, it was very interesting, sort of seeing this sort of makeshift family come together, and maybe I'm just a sucker for those stories. Maybe I'm not, but I was really entertained by the story. Even though it's a much smaller story, it was very, very good. Paul Giamatti's acting in particular it was something new I wasn't necessarily used to, but I really thought he did a phenomenal job. I've only really seen him in John Adams, and I think there he gives a phenomenal performance. But in this one, he also gives an excellent performance as well. Sort of this, sort of angry school teacher at the beginning, and sort of becomes more, I would say more humble, but more heartened towards others. And just seeing these people who are sort of left with no one or no family to go to for the holidays was very interesting and very I don't know how to put my words on this, but it was a film I wasn't necessarily looking forward to, but the more I watched the trailers and the more I thought about it, I was like, maybe I should go see this. So I went with some friends a while ago, and that entire experience in the theater was really really fun. And it was really I don't know if I've necessarily had that many movie going experiences where I sort of came out of the theater feeling not necessarily refreshed, but sort of like content with what I had watched, and sort of think about like, man, that was a really good movie. So I can't wait till it comes out on home video. Maybe I'll go see it in the theater again. But it was a really really good film. Really well, definitely well written. The writing in it, I think has potential to win an Academy Award. It was very very well written. Yeah, I don't necessarily know what else to say about it, but it was a very very good film, and I hope to see more kind of like it. At number two is Suzume. Now, some people may say I'm cheating because this film technically came out in 2022 in Japan, but I'm going off the American release date, which this film was released in April. So, I think it kind of counts. But yeah, compared to Miyazaki, I'm definitely a little more familiar with Shinkai's films. At least before I got to Miyazaki. Now I would say I'm fairly familiar with both of their works. I don't know who I necessarily like more, but I don't necessarily think that's appropriate for this type of film. I'm talking about Suzume mainly compared to Shinkai's other works. It was like a lot of the other directors I've mentioned in this video. It's very different than a lot of his other pictures, particularly Garden of Words, 5 centimeters per second, Your Name, Weathering with You. It's much different. There isn't really a lot of romance involved. It's much more of an epic compared to his previous works. Kind of similar to some degree to Children Who Chase Lost Voices and The Place Promised in Our Early Days, sort of more of an epic. But I would say compared to those two, this one I think definitely pulls it off much better. I don't necessarily think it's Shinkai's best work, but of that type of genre that he's done in the past, it was much better than in the past. It is very interesting. I really love his style, the way he does the characters and does sort of these stories that and these backgrounds that are real life places in Japan. It's really incredible. I love his art style. The music in this one was phenomenal. I guess it's something I've sort of forgotten to mention. A lot of the music in these films that I've mentioned so far have been very good. But I remember particularly Suzume's, mainly the main theme is phenomenal. I don't know if Suzume is my favorite soundtrack of Makoto Shinkai's works. It's up there, but I don't think it's my favorite. It's probably Your Name, I think, has the best soundtrack. But yeah, this is one I've been able to watch a few times since I first watched it in the theaters. The original theatrical experience that I did back in April was very good. just sort of the colors and the way they popped and the sound and all that. It was very good. It reminded me a bit of Weathering With You to some degree in terms of going across Japan from place to place. Although again, it was on a much more epic scale. And something I was a little surprised about is dealing with national tragedy, or not necessarily national tragedy, but dealing with tragedies that impact you and that have impacted others. And in particular, Suzumi is dealing with the death of her mother as a result of um, the great tsunami that happened in Japan in 2011. Um, and that's something that Shinkai has dealt with, particularly in Your Name. He dealt with that a bit, but in this one, it's a little more head on and an event that people, I mean, remember. I mean, I don't necessarily remember. I was alive when it happened, but I don't really remember it that much. But to sort of see how that impacts people even now um, was an interesting thing to see. Um, I think animation wise, I think it is Shinkai's best. Um, and like I said, of that sort of epic adventure type of story that he's kind of done in the past, I think this one was very good. Um, yeah, I would say I think it was better than The Boy and the Heron because I think Makoto Shinkai definitely since Your Name he sort of I think has gotten his foothold in the anime industry, not just in Japan but sort of worldwide as anime has become much more of a popular thing. So I think he's found his style. He's found in terms of his artwork, he's found sort of things that are working for him in his stories. So I can't wait to see what comes from him in the future. I'm sure it's going to be great. And this was another one that was phenomenal. This is definitely in my top five Shinkai films. It was very good. And at number one is Oppenheimer. So most people probably aren't really surprised by that I would probably pick Oppenheimer or Barbie to be my number one. But of the two, I would definitely say or not Barbie. I wasn't necessarily a fan of Barbie that much, but Oppenheimer was. Oppenheimer to me, I think, at least for me, sort of signified that movies were back. That after the whole stuff that's happened in the last few years and not being able to go to the theaters and there not really being a lot to go see in the theaters, it was very it was inspirational. I will be honest. I think had I not watched that movie, I don't really necessarily think my short film would have either been made or been made the way I had wanted it to be. It really reignited in me a passion to make movies and just sort of seeing the potential that cinema has and the use of IMAX. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX, but I still saw it in IMAX. It was quite an experience seeing that in IMAX. Seeing you know the black and white was phenomenal. The color was phenomenal. The sound was amazing. The score is I think one of the best in a Nolan picture. I would have to rewatch all of Nolan's films I think to pick my favorite, but I think definitely Oppenheimer is up there. It wasn't Hans Zimmer this time, but I can't remember the composer's name, but his score is amazing. Um, the story is very complex. I definitely noticed on my first run through how Nolan dealt with time. It was a very interesting way he used that. His visuals, I think I finally am starting to get the understanding of how to use the visual language of cinema, and I think Nolan did a very good job with that in this film. Um, the acting, Cillian Murphy was phenomenal as Oppenheimer. Robert Downey Jr. as Strauss, or how to pronounce his name, was very good. I'm hoping that he can pull off a Best Supporting Actor not just nomination, but win, because I thought his performance was fairly good. Emily Blunt was good. Some of the other supporting casts, like Matt Damon, were also really good. It was a very there were a lot of moments that were intense, particularly at Los Alamos and their building of the bomb and developing these things. It was intense, and the sort of the fallout after. I thought on my first watch of it in theater, I didn't think I was having a hard time figuring out about the political fallout, and that was sort of the main crux of the film in terms of the plot. But upon the second viewing, I thought it was very good, and I really resonated with me, the message of the film. Um, Yeah, is it Nolan's best? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily think so right now. It's definitely a lot better than some of his works in the last few years. It was yeah. I can't really think of much to say because I was blown away by it. So yeah, it was a very exciting film to watch. Well, that does it for my top 2023 films. I hope if you're like me and you're a cinema nerd or you're trying to become a filmmaker, I hope this year was inspirational to you as much as it was for me. It was it was a very exciting year. I can't again, like I said, I can't think of another year in my life where it was like there was just sort of something new and exciting coming out like almost every month or something, and it was fun. The summer in particular, there was a lot I didn't mention, like Mission Impossible was another one on there. That was a fun film. It didn't make my top 10 list, but it was a very I thought it was a very good film. Not my favorite, but it was still a fun time. Um, but yeah, I thought this year was really good, and I'll be honest. I mean, I'm gonna miss this year. I think because it was such a good year for cinema. But I hope to come back next year and give a top 10 2024 pictures. So we'll see what comes out then, and yeah. So thanks for watching.